Good morning, friends. It's Saturday, and I'm back with Chapter 24 on my upcoming book, Campaign at Fort Stix. Now it's time to grab a snack, dim the lights, and let me take you into the mists of time with a story I call Range Operations. Wisps of smoke, rising from the dimly glowing embers, carried the deep, acrid smell of burned wood from the ash-filled hole in the earth which was once the vault of Fort Stix. Apparently, there was enough airflow beneath the floor to feed the fire, which reduced the floor to ash along with the rest of the structure. Lines of ash from burned sticks of the former camouflage seemed to form hieroglyphics on the now dark sands surrounding the pit in some places, while others looked like fat burned worms that failed to escape. There were now 2 craters in the field, really making it look like a war zone. On the one hand, I missed my fort and was sad it was gone. On the other hand, I now had an opportunity to build a new fort using the knowledge gained from Fort Stix, and that was sure to be an adventure. I reached into my back pocket and took out the page I drew the day before while watching the flames dance on my fort. It was a rough sketch of a tree fort. The first thing I would need in order to construct a tree fort would be a couple of sturdy trees. Looking into the woods around the field, most of the trees were only 3 to 6 inches in diameter. I needed some stout trees of at least a foot in diameter in my estimation, and there needed to be a couple of them not too far apart. I headed for the corner where our field met Aunt Florence's and studied the trees. Walking along the perimeter, I searched for suitable trees close to the field, but was not finding what I wanted. As I neared the garage, I came across the ones where the grapevines grew. There was one tree there of sufficient size with a couple of about 6 inches close by. I climbed up into it to see what the view was like. From my position about 8 feet off the ground, I could see the vent in the side of the garage where I had looked out on my brother that day. I could also see across my aunt's property and the next lot all the way to the road. But looking towards my house, the garage blocked the view about halfway up the drive. I could not see where my dad parked his truck, the back porch, nor the backyard. Not an ideal location to maintain surveillance on my domain. I was about to climb out of the tree when I noticed a broken end of a grapevine. It looked hollow. I broke a piece off and found it was indeed hollow. I blew through it, but was rewarded with no sound. Curious, I got a match out of my pocket and lit the end on fire. It burned out quickly and began to smolder. I sucked on the vine to get the flame up and was rewarded with sweet-tasting smoke. I discovered a new way to smoke without having cigarettes. I sat back in the tree and puffed on the vine until it was burned down to a nub. The smoke was sweet and made me feel kind of lightheaded. I crushed out the end against the trunk of the tree and spit on it to make sure it was out before putting it in my pocket. About that time, I heard Mark wandering around the garage by the chicken coop. I watched as he wandered over to look at Fort Stix and realized that it was now Camp Fire. This seemed funny to me and I laughed out loud. Mark spun around to see where I was but did not see me. He slowly walked towards the woods where he heard me laugh, looking cautiously around. I do not know why, but I found this extremely funny as I watched him look for me and had to fight to keep from laughing. As he edged into the woods, I suddenly had a great idea. I stood on the branch of the tree and unzipped my pants. Within moments, it was raining in the woods all around him, and he looked up to see why it was raining. "Don't pee on me!" he screeched, backing away. I laughed and finished up. To my credit, I was not even close to peeing on him. I zipped my pants and sat on the limb as he looked up, making funny faces at me. I found this funny too, and began to laugh uncontrollably. I laughed so hard I fell back off the branch and was hanging upside down by my legs. I reached up and grabbed the limb and spun to my feet as I dropped out of the tree. "What were you doing up there?" Mark asked. "Scouting for Indians," I said, and began to walk toward the field. Mark looked around, seemingly suddenly concerned there might be Indians in the vicinity. "So why were you peeing out of the tree?" he asked. "I was marking my territory," I said confidently. "I do not want anyone trying to stake a claim on my woods." This seemed to satisfy him, and he followed along quietly as I headed for the backyard to drink from the water hose. Suddenly, I was very thirsty and kind of hungry. I got my drink and then spotted several ripe cherry tomatoes in the garden. They made a fine snack, and soon I was thinking about a new fort again. The trees I found were not ideal for a tree fort, but if I were to use multiple trees, I could probably build a sturdy platform for my fort. This would mean using longer pieces of lumber, preferably 2x4s. It suddenly occurred to me that all of my lumber stockpiles were laying in ashes in the field. Where would I get more lumber? Mark had gone into the house when he saw me go into the garden, so I wandered down the hill toward my grandpa's garden. He was doing something by his back porch, and I walked over to see. He was busy working on a lawnmower, but stopped when he saw me there. "What are you up to today?" he asked, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. "Not much," I said, sitting on the concrete porch. "Just wanted to see what you were up to." "Time to sharpen the blade on this mower and change the oil." He took a drink from a glass of tea. "Grandma says the lady up the street talked to her about you at church yesterday. Said you were looking for yards to mow or other chores to earn money. What are you trying to earn money for?" I perked up at the mention of the lady up the street. "I need to earn another $25 so I can buy a new rifle on my birthday. It's on sale until Labor Day for $35, but the scope will be another $10, and then there's a couple dollars for shells." He smiled. "Sounds like a good reason to work. So you already have $25? "Yes, sir. I earned 15 stacking hay in Wisconsin and then another 10 babysitting this weekend," I grinned. "Well, I'll be sure and let you know if I hear of anybody looking for work to be done," Grandpa said, standing up. "I got to finish this mower now, though." "Okay, thanks, Grandpa," I said and headed back. Walking up the hill, my step quickened a bit as I had an idea while talking with Grandpa. I needed to get on my bike and check the next street over and see if there was anybody there that needed their grass cut. While I was at it, I could watch the curbs along the way and see if anyone was throwing any lumber away. I headed off on my bike and spent the rest of the afternoon exploring for discarded lumber and asking people if I could cut grass or do other chores to earn money. I came up short on both accounts and rolled back home. It was becoming quite the challenge. Day after day, I set out on my bike to see about earning money and locating discarded lumber to build my new fort. Each day, I learned more about our neighborhood and even went as far as to explore the school I would be attending. This period of exploration proved to be invaluable during the school year, but for my intended purposes, it was but yet another dead end. On Friday evening, when I rolled into the driveway, I was surprised to see Dad was already home, and there was a tractor out in the field by the house. There was a man I did not know on the tractor, and he was pushing dirt around the field, as Dad directed him. In the back of the truck were a couple of sheets of corrugated tin and some lumber. I parked my bike next to the chicken coop and watched to see what was happening. After filling the craters, the man on the tractor leveled most of the field and pushed a very large pile of dirt and sand almost to the tree line, about 35 feet out from the garage. When he was done, I saw Dad hand him some money and he disappeared down the driveway. Dad came over and called me to the truck. "Help me carry this metal and lumber to the field," he said, and grabbed an armload. I helped move materials to the field and used a post hole digger to make holes where Dad said to. Before long, we were setting posts in the sand and he nailed a frame together on them in front of the dirt pile. It was not until he nailed the corrugated metal to the back and two sides that I realized we were building the rifle range. The final piece of metal was nailed to the top at an angle. Once the metal was nailed in place, Dad had me get 2 shovels and we piled dirt from the sides of the pile against the back and sides of the frame. When we were done, there was a good backstop for shooting targets and a large hill of dirt behind to stop bullets that got through. Dad paced off distances and drove stakes in the ground to mark them, and then set up a table with a bench rest about where Fort Stix had been. Finally, he grabbed a square piece of plywood nailed to a stick like a sign, taped a target to it, and stuck it in front of the backstop. The range was ready for shooting. Mom called to us from the back porch that dinner was ready, and I followed Dad inside to eat. I was hoping maybe we were going to get out the black powder pistols and do a little shooting, since the sun was still above the trees and we still had plenty of light. Sitting at the table, I picked at my dinner as I looked out at the field. A week ago, I had a fort and was chasing snakes under car parts as I dreamed of getting my new rifle for my birthday. Now, 2 days before my birthday, I was looking at a barren field with a newly constructed range. But the fact remained, I was still short of getting the rifle by about half of what I thought I needed. After dinner, I went to my couch on the porch to read my magazines. I glanced up at the gun rack as I passed and knew I had to make something happen to get that gun. Saturday morning, I was up before the sun. I ate breakfast quietly, fed the chickens, turkeys, and ducks, and finally picked vegetables from the garden before watering. When I was done with my chores, I left the vegetables on the kitchen table for my mother and hopped on my bike. I only had an idea of a plan, but was full of determination to make it happen. Before this day was done, I would have earned the money or wore myself out completely trying. Since the neighborhood had fewer houses per street closer to the school, I rode into that area to work my way back. It was not long after 8 in the morning when I knocked on my first door. Hearing me knock, a lady came around the house from her garden and stopped by the gate. I could tell she recognized me, but in my mind, that was the point. I wanted people to know that I was serious. "Good morning, young man," she said, smiling. "Morning, ma'am," I said, smiling. "I was wondering if you have any chores you need done." She started to say no, but then stopped and looked back behind the house. "As a matter of fact, I do," she said. "I just finished weeding and raking, and there are 4 bags that are too heavy for me to lift. If you could carry them to the curb for me, I would be grateful." "Yes, ma'am," I said excitedly and headed round to the backyard. After I carried the 4 large trash bags full of leaves and weeds to the curb, she thanked me and handed me $1. Then, before I left, she asked me to write my name and phone number on a piece of paper. I left only 15 minutes after arriving with another $1 earned. If I could do this all day, I would make my goal. My initial success was kind of like when you go fishing and catch the best fish of the day with the first cast. You feel really good about it and put your whole heart into it, but if the rest of the fish will not cooperate, you were done after the first. It seemed my day was headed that way. I received a steady stream of no all the way back to my street. Pausing at the corner, I was trying to decide if I would go across to the last street in the area or just head up my street toward the highway. Then I realized I had not knocked on the door of the house I was sitting in front of. It was where the lady said her husband cut the grass with the tractor. So far, I had heard no a lot, but no one had been rude. If I knocked here, the chance for rude was there. I pulled my pants up a little, retucked my shirt, and rode back to their driveway. I walked slowly to the door, knowing if the answer was no, it would come rudely. I was just about to knock when I heard a man off to my left. "Good morning, son," he said, stepping around the corner. "What brings you round this morning?" To my surprise, It was the man who leveled my field with his tractor. "Morning, sir," I said, smiling. "I just stopped by to see if you had any chores you needed done. I'm trying to earn the money to buy a new rifle on my birthday Monday." "Oh, yes," he smiled. "Your father told me you were working to buy a rifle. Glenfield Model 20, I believe. Nice rifle. I had one before I traded up to the Model 60. "Yes, sir. I talked to Dad once about getting the Model 60, but he said I needed to become proficient with a bolt-action rifle before moving up to a semi-automatic." I grinned. "I'm just glad he did not say I had to get the Model 10. It's a single shot, and you can lose track of a squirrel quick fiddling with getting around in the chamber. I had that happen with the Winchester single we have now." "Yes, I can see how that could be a problem," he said. "You seem to have put a bit of thought into this." "Yes, sir," I agreed. "Well, I have a proposition for you. Follow me," he said, and walked around the corner to stop by an old tool shed beside his garage. "I thought I saw you build a small fort in the field I scraped. Is that right?" he asked. "Yes, sir." I felt a pang of regret for Fort Stix. "So you seem to be handy with tools. You see this tool shed?" He pointed at it. "How much would you charge me to tear this shed down?" I walked around the shed and looked at it inside and out. It was built like Fort Stix, except there was a 2x4 frame inside the wall panels. I figured I could strip the wall planks off and then disassemble the frame after. "What are you going to do with the wood?" I asked. "If you tear it down, I would like it piled by the curb for pickup," he said, pointing to the end of the driveway. "Could I have the wood?" I asked hopefully. "Sure, if you haul it off, it's yours." I thought a minute. I had $26 now, and it would take at least the rest of the day and probably part of the next to do the job. I still needed $24 to get the rifle and scope. I had stacked hay for basically $5 a day, and this would not be as hard. On the other hand, it would take away from time to find other jobs, but I wanted that wood for my new fort. "How would you feel about $25? I asked, feeling the price was too high. He scratched his chin. "How about 20, and you be sure to pick up all the nails after you pull them?" "Yes, sir," I said, reaching out to shake his hand. "I can sure do that." "That's fine," he said. "Just knock on the door when you finish and I will have your money. There's a wrecking bar and hammer laying inside the shed you can use." I headed into the shed and came back out with the wrecking bar. The shed was really old, and the nails pulled out easily. To save time on cleanup, I found an empty coffee can in the shed and put the nails I pulled into it. The sun was pretty high in the sky when I finished pulling the planks off the walls, so I grabbed an armload, climbed on my bike, and hauled them to my house. Mom made me a sandwich before I left to finish the job and gave me a plastic bottle of water to take with me. I really did not need the soda bottle of water, as I had been drinking from the man's garden hose when I got thirsty, but I took it anyway. I was feeling pretty energetic and decided to haul all the planks home before tackling the frame. It only took 4 more trips, and I was back to remove the frame. Studying how the frame was put together, I found there were only a couple nails in each corner holding the walls together. After pulling them, I simply pushed the shed over and was able to remove the planks from the roof without climbing up. It did not take long to finish, and as I was getting ready to head to the house with a load of wood, I saw my dad driving by from town. He stopped to talk to me and let me put the rest of the lumber in the truck along with the can of nails. As he drove off toward the house, I went to see the man about the money. The sun had just begun to touch the trees at the western part of the field when I unloaded the last of the wood from Dad's truck. I made a neat pile beside the car parts by the garage and left the can of nails there as well. I now had the money for my rifle and also the wood to build a new fort. There were also plenty of long 2x4s. I counted my money 3 times before I stashed it away. I had $46. That was enough to buy the rifle, the scope, and 2 boxes of shells. I still needed to earn at least another $3 in order to make sure I had enough for taxes. Heading for dinner, My confidence was high that I should be able to find $3 more the next day. After all, I had earned 21 today. I climbed into my chair at the table, and before she brought my plate, my mom set 2 letters on the table in front of me. Both were addressed to Master Kevin at our address. One was from my grandmother in Lake Station, and the other was from my aunt. I opened them up, knowing by the size that they were birthday cards. My aunt sent me $5, and my grandmother sent me a 20, plus a shiny Eisenhower silver dollar. I was ecstatic. I only needed $3 to get my rifle, and here was 25 more. I did not count the Eisenhower dollar. That would be tucked safely away forever in my coin collection. It was all I could do to eat my dinner. I was excited. I was getting my new rifle. Time passes very quickly when you're having a good time, but when you're waiting for something, even 5 minutes takes forever. Since I already had the money for the rifle, I did not have to work for it anymore, and thus had nothing to occupy my mind. I tried scouting out new locations and getting started on my new fort, but was too distracted to maintain focus. I would be evaluating a spot and then look up after realizing I was daydreaming about the new rifle and have no idea what I was contemplating. The big day finally arrived. When I rose with the sun, I realized first that I was now 11 years old. Then, I got out my money and stuffed it into my wallet in preparation for going to the store. As with dinner the night before, I struggled to eat my breakfast and then went out to get my chores done. I even took the time to add compost tea to the garden before I watered it in order to pass time because I knew my father was still in bed. I finished picking vegetables and took them into the house. As I set them on the table, I smelled cigarette smoke and saw that the coffee pot was brewing. Dad was up! I sat at the table and munched a few cherry tomatoes while I waited for him. Then, when I heard the door open, I looked up but did not see Dad come out of the bathroom. Instead, my grandfather had come in the back door. "Good morning," he said, smiling, and handed me a small box. "Happy birthday." "Thanks, Grandpa," I said, and opened the box. Inside the box, laying on some cotton, was a brand new, shiny, old-timer pocket knife. It had 2 blades, one large and one small, and the smaller blade was squared off at the tip for use as a screwdriver. It had nice hardwood handles and polished brass ends. "Wow, thanks, Grandpa," I said as I opened the big blade and checked it for sharpness. "Careful, don't cut yourself," he said. "I won't," I said, and proceeded to cut the end of my finger, checking the blade. "Yep, it is very sharp." He laughed as I stuck my finger in my mouth. It only bled a little bit and stopped almost immediately. I closed the knife and put it in my pocket. Dad came out of the bathroom about then and poured them a cup of coffee. I could feel the rubber band inside me winding up tighter and tighter. When were we headed for the store? I sat quietly, trying to be patient, but it was very hard. I worked long and hard for this day. "So, I saw you tearing down that shed the other day," Grandpa said. "How much did he pay you?" $20, and I got to keep the wood for a new fort," I said, grinning. $20? That's pretty good for a day's work at your age," he said, smiling. "Good job." "Thanks," I said, and looked to see how much of his coffee Dad had drank. Dad drained his cup and grabbed the pot to pour another. I thought I was going to go insane. I don't know if I sighed or what, but Grandpa laughed and poured himself another cup of coffee. Then he turned to Dad. "I think we ought to get going before he explodes." "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing," Dad said and grinned widely. "We still have to be back here in time for the party when everyone gets here." With that, we were out the door and piled in the truck to go to the store. I got my new rifle, with a scope, and several boxes of shells. Grandpa suggested I ought to buy a cleaning kit and some good gun oil as well, and I took his advice to heart. When we got back to the house, everyone was there for the party, so we put the gun in the rack for later and enjoyed the party. It was a heck of a day. My grandparents and aunt and uncle came from Lake Station, and I was not sure they would since they sent their cards ahead of time. I also got cards from my great-grandmother in Chicago, my uncle in Wisconsin, and my aunt in New York. There were several presents as well, along with cake and ice cream, but they had a hard time competing with my new rifle. I hope you enjoyed this look into the campaign at Fort Stix. That's all for now, but I'll be back again next week with another story, just for you. Until then, sleep well.